The rain had started just as I turned onto our street, a soft gray drizzle that blurred the line between the heavy sky and the wet pavement. It was the kind of afternoon that felt like evening, the kind that made the warmth of the house seem like a sanctuary. I pushed the front door open with my shoulder, my arms full of groceries, and that familiar scent of lemon polish and old books wrapped around me. It was a scent of my own making, a life built carefully, quietly, after Robert passed. The house was always too quiet now, but on days like this, the silence felt peaceful, not lonely. I put the groceries away methodically, lining up cans of soup in the cupboard, placing the milk in the refrigerator door. Routine was a comfort. It was when I was emptying the tote bag that I saw it, tucked into the side pocket where I never put anything. A small, stiff cardboard box, no larger than my palm. It was damp from the rain, the brown paper wrapping slightly puckered. My name and address were written in a precise, unfamiliar hand. There was no return address, just a smudged postmark from the city, over 200 miles away. My heart did a little two-step against my ribs, a package. I was not expecting anything. I held it, turning it over. It had a certain weight to it, a solid, dense feeling. And then I knew with a sudden, chilling certainty that slithered down my spine. The shape, the size, it was the box. The one I had sent to Marcus 3 weeks ago for his 30th birthday. My fingers, suddenly clumsy, fumbled with the simple tape seal. The cardboard flap sprang open. Nestled inside a bed of crumpled white tissue paper was the watch. The vintage Cartier tank watch that had cost me more than a sensible person would ever spend on a single object. Robert's watch. I had saved for 2 years to have it professionally restored, to replace the worn leather strap with a new black alligator one. I had imagined the look on Marcus's face when he opened it, the recognition of what it was, what it meant. He had always admired it on his father's wrist. "Someday, son," Robert would say, and Marcus's eyes would shine. But here it was back in my hands, unworn, unwanted, returned. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. This was not a mistake. The post office does not make errors like this. They do not carefully rewrap a package and mark it returned to sender without cause. My eyes scanned the box again, and that was when I saw the slip of paper I had missed tucked under the tissue. It was a small, cream-colored note card. The handwriting was the same as on the mailing label, that same efficient, feminine script. It was not Marcus's loose, sprawling hand. It was a stranger's hand. I had to sit down. The weight of the day, of the rain, of the silence, pressed down on me all at once. I lowered myself into Robert's old armchair, the leather groaning in protest. The note contained only a single sentence, but I read it 3 times, my brain refusing to parse the meaning. He asked me to handle his mail now. The words were simple, polite even, but they were a door slammed in my face. They were a wall erected between my son and me. He asked me to handle his mail now. Who was me? And since when did Marcus need anyone to handle anything? He was a grown man, a successful architect. He was capable and independent. That was the son I had raised. The son who, as a boy, would meticulously sort his own baseball cards, who would organize his school projects with an engineer's precision. He did not need a secretary for his personal life. The cold dread that had been a knot in my stomach began to spread, seeping into my veins like ice water. This was not just about a birthday gift being returned. This was about the phone calls. The calls that had been going straight to voicemail for months. At first, it was once a week, then twice. Then every time I dialed his number, I had made excuses for him. He is busy. He is traveling for work. He is in a meeting. He is a young man with his own life. I had repeated these phrases to myself like a mantra, a shield against the creeping fear. But this note, this returned box, it was a confirmation of that fear. It was a physical thing, something I could hold in my trembling hands. It was proof that the silence was intentional. I reached for the phone on the side table, the old landline receiver feeling heavy and alien. My thumb hovered over the speed dial button labeled MARCUS cell. I pressed it. The line clicked, and then there was nothing but the empty hiss of a connection, followed by that achingly familiar tone. And then his voice, but not his live voice. His recorded voice, bright and cheerful from a time that felt like years ago. "You have reached Marcus Reed. Leave a message." The beep sounded, a short, sharp stab into the silence of the room. "Marcus," I said, and my own voice sounded thin and reedy. "It is Mom. I received a package today, the watch, it was returned." I paused, swallowing hard. There was a note, from someone named Tisha. She said you asked her to handle your mail. I do not understand. Please, honey, can you call me back? I just need to know that you are all right." I hung up, the click of the receiver echoing in the quiet. I stared at the phone, as if I could will it to ring. The rain tapped a gentle, mocking rhythm against the windowpane. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. The house was so still I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. I picked up the receiver again. I dialed his number, my movements slow and deliberate. Click, hiss, the cheerful voicemail greeting. "You have reached Marcus Reed." I did not leave a message this time. I just listened to the sound of his voice, trying to find a clue in the cadence, a hint of something wrong in the tone. But it was just Marcus, my Marcus, trapped in a recording. A thought, dark and terrifying, wormed its way into my mind. What if it was not his voice anymore? What if this recording was all that was left of him? I shook my head, trying to dislodge the paranoia. That was ridiculous. He was a 30-year-old man. He had simply moved on. The idea was a fresh wave of pain. He had moved on from me, from our history, from the memory of his father embodied in that watch. I looked down at the timepiece, still cradled in its box on my lap. The polished gold case gleamed in the dim light. It was a beautiful, useless thing now. A relic. I reached out and touched the crystal face, my finger tracing the elegant Roman numerals. And as I did, my eyes caught on something I had not noticed before. A tiny, almost imperceptible smudge on the brand new black alligator strap. It was not a fingerprint or a mark from shipping. It was a faint, reddish-brown streak, the color of dried clay or perhaps something else. It was a mark that had not been there when I packed the box. A mark that suggested the watch had not just been sent back. It had been handled. It had been worn. And in that moment, the silence of the house was no longer peaceful. It was a presence. It was the sound of everything I did not know, and the terrible, growing certainty that the son I thought I knew was gone. The silence in my house had become a physical presence, a heavy blanket smothering every room. It had been 3 days since that phone call, 3 days of unanswered texts and calls that went straight to a voicemail box that was, I discovered with a fresh wave of nausea, full. My son was a ghost, and the woman who had answered his phone was the only one who seemed to know where his grave was. Maternal instinct is not a gentle whisper. It is a primal scream in the blood, a siren that will not be silenced. I could not sit in this quiet any longer. I had to move. My sister Alina arrived within the hour, her sensible sedan pulling into the driveway without a sound. She did not need to ask questions when I had called, my voice thin and strained. She simply said she was on her way. Seeing her step out of the car, her face a mask of practical concern, was like a life raft appearing in a stormy sea. Alina was my opposite in many ways. Where I felt everything with a fiery intensity, she approached life with a calm, analytical precision. She was the one who had organized our parents' estate, who navigated bureaucracy with a sigh, not a scream. I needed that now. I needed her cool head to temper the wildfire of fear raging inside me. "Tell me everything from the beginning," she said, settling at my kitchen table with a notepad already in hand. She did not drink the tea I offered. Alina was here to work. I recounted the call, the woman's voice, Tisha, the way it had tightened like a fist around the words, "not a good time." I told her about the silence that had followed, a void more terrifying than any argument. Alina listened, her pen scratching against the paper, her brow furrowed. "The first thing we must do is verify his status," she said, her tone clinical. "We need to rule out the simple explanations. Do you have the number for his firm?" I did. Marcus had given it to me years ago, scribbled on the back of a business card, a gesture that had felt like an offering of adulthood. "In case you ever need me, Mom." I found the card, the paper soft at the edges from being stored in a kitchen drawer. My hand trembled as I dialed the number Alina pointed to, the main switchboard. A receptionist answered with a bright, corporate chirp. "Thank you for calling Henderson and Stiles. How may I direct your call?" "I am trying to reach Marcus Vanguard, please," I said, forcing my voice to stay level. "One moment, I will connect you." There was a click, then a ring. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then, a different voice, older, warmer, picked up. It was a voice I recognized. "Marcus Vanguard's line, this is Arthur Finley." Arthur? He had been Marcus's mentor since he started at the firm, a kind man who had come to our house for dinner once. He had praised my lasagna and Marcus's work ethic in the same breath. "Arthur, it is Clara Vanguard. Marcus's mother. A pause. "Clara, it is good to hear from you. How are you?" His voice was cautious now, the professional warmth cooling by a degree. "I am well, thank you. Arthur, I am trying to reach Marcus. Is he available?" The pause that followed was too long. I could hear the faint hum of an office in the background, the distant sound of a printer. "Clara," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Marcus has not been in the office for, well, it has been several weeks now." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. Elinor's hand found mine, squeezing hard. "Several weeks," I repeated, the words feeling foreign. "But he told me he was swamped with a new project." "He is on a leave of absence," Arthur said, his words careful, measured. "Personal leave, that is the official designation. Tisha, his partner, she calls in every so often to check on his email, but we have not heard from Marcus directly. We are all very concerned." Tisha, the name was a key turning in a lock, but it opened a door to a darker room than I had imagined. Partner. The word echoed in my head. I thanked Arthur, the pleasantries automatic, and hung up. The silence in my kitchen was now deafening. "He has not been to work for weeks," I said to Elinor, my voice hollow. "Arthur said Tisha is the one handling it. She is lying, Elinor. She is keeping him from me." Elinor's lips were a thin, determined line. "Then we will not call again. We will go there, today, now." The plan was formed with a military efficiency that only Elinor could muster. We would not call ahead. We would arrive as a pair, a united front. I would be the emotional core, the worried mother. She would be the logical observer, the one to see the details I might miss in my distress. The drive to the city was a blur of gray highway and my own frantic thoughts. What state would he be in? What had this woman done to him? We stood on the pristine doorstep of his townhouse, a place that had once felt like a second home to me. Now it felt like a fortress. I rang the bell. The seconds stretched into an eternity. Then, the door opened just a crack, secured by a chain. Tisha's face appeared in the sliver. She was paler than I remembered, her eyes shadowed. That flicker of panic I had heard on the phone was now visible in the way her gaze darted from me to Elinor and back again. "Mrs. Vanguard," she said, her voice tight, "this is not a good time. I told you that." "I am aware of what you told me, Tisha," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I am here to see my son. Now." "He is not here," she insisted, her grip tightening on the edge of the door. "He is away, a business trip. It was very last minute." Elinor stepped forward, her presence a calm, immovable force. "We have just spoken with Arthur Finley at Henderson and Stiles. He informed us that Marcus has been on a personal leave of absence for several weeks. So, I will ask you again. Where is Marcus?" The lie was exposed, laid bare on the welcome mat. Tisha's face crumpled for a second, a mask of defiance and fear, but she did not back down. "You do not understand. He does not want to see anyone. He needs rest. He needs quiet." "He needs his family," I said, and something in me broke. The polite deference, the patience, it evaporated. This was my child. "Step aside, Tisha." "You cannot just barge in here," she cried, but her voice was losing its power. I did not barge, I pushed. It was not a violent shove, but a firm, determined pressure against the door. The chain snapped taut with a metallic protest, but the old wood of the doorframe was weaker. With a sickening crack, the screw holding the chain gave way and the door swung open. Tisha stumbled back, a hand flying to her mouth. Her eyes were wide with a terror that seemed disproportionate, a fear that was about more than just a broken chain. I did not look at her. I stepped into the foyer, my heart hammering against my ribs. The house was dark, the blinds drawn. The air was stale, carrying a faint, unpleasant scent of unwashed laundry and neglected trash. "Marcus," I called out, my voice echoing in the unnerving quiet. "Marcus, it is Mom." There was no answer. I moved through the living room, a place I had helped him decorate. It was tidy, but it had the sterile order of a space that was not lived in. Elinor was right behind me, her eyes scanning everything. Tisha trailed us, her protests now weak, whispered pleas. "Please, you do not understand. You will make it worse." I ignored her and moved down the short hallway toward the bedrooms. The door to the master bedroom was ajar. I pushed it open. The room was dark, the curtains drawn. The bed was unmade, a chaotic tangle of sheets, but it was empty. A smaller door to what was usually a home office or a guest room was closed. I reached for the knob. Tisha made a strangled sound. "Do not," Please, Clara, I am begging you. I turned the knob and pushed the door open. The room was dim, lit only by the slivers of light cutting through the closed blinds. And there, slumped in a worn armchair facing a blank television screen, was my son. The sight of him stole the air from my lungs. This was not the vibrant, ambitious man I had spoken to just a month ago. This was a husk. He was painfully thin, his shoulders sharp angles under a faded t-shirt. His hair was lank and unkempt. He did not turn as I entered, did not react to the light flooding in from the hallway. He simply stared at the dark screen as if waiting for a signal that would never come. "Marcus," I whispered, my voice cracking. Slowly, as if the movement required immense effort, he turned his head. His eyes were the worst part. They were the same warm brown eyes he had had since he was a boy, but the light in them was gone. They were hollow, empty pools of despair. There was no recognition in them, only a vast, weary emptiness. "Mom," the word was a dry, rasping sound, barely audible. I rushed to him, falling to my knees beside the chair, taking his cold, limp hands in mine. "Marcus, my God, what has happened? What is wrong?" He did not answer. He just looked at me, and then his gaze shifted to the doorway, where Tisha stood weeping silently, and Alina stood with a hand over her mouth, her own composure shattered. His eyes filled with a shame so profound it was a physical pain to witness. I cannot," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I am so tired, Mom." It was then that I saw them. On the small table next to the chair, next to a glass of water, was a prescription pill bottle. I picked it up. The label was made out to Marcus, but the name of the medication was one I did not recognize. As I held it, my eyes fell on a notepad half-tucked under the chair. Scrawled in what I recognized as Tisha's handwriting, next to a list of times, were the words, "Maintain dosage. Do not let him skip. Keeps him calm." Alina had seen it too. She met my gaze, her face pale with a dawning, horrific understanding. This was not just depression. This was something else. Tisha was not just concealing his condition. She was orchestrating it. The question was no longer what was wrong with my son, but what had she done to him? The silence in the room was no longer just oppressive, it was sinister. The air in our living room was thick enough to taste, a heavy cocktail of lemon polish from my mother's frantic cleaning, and the sharp, metallic scent of an impending summer storm. I sat on the edge of the sofa, my knees bouncing, my fingers laced so tightly together the knuckles were white little islands. Mom was a silent fortress in the armchair opposite me, her posture unnaturally straight, her gaze fixed on the window as if she could see the future rolling in with the dark clouds. She had not said much since I had called her, my voice a broken thing, and asked her to come. She had simply arrived, her presence a quiet promise that whatever happened next, I would not face it alone. The sound of a key in the front door was a gunshot in the quiet. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage of bone. Tisha swept in, her smile bright and practiced, but it faltered for a fraction of a second when she saw my mother. The mask was still in place, but I could see the calculations happening behind her eyes. "Alina," Tisha said, her voice dripping with a warmth that did not reach her eyes. "What a surprise. I did not know you were visiting." "I am not visiting," my mother said, her voice low and steady. "Marcus called me." Tisha's gaze sliced over to me, a flicker of warning in their depths. It was a look I had come to know well, a silent command to fall in line, to present the perfect, united front. For so long, I had obeyed. But today, feeling the solid, unyielding presence of my mother, something shifted. The fear was still there, a cold knot in my stomach, but beneath it was a new, fragile ember of defiance. "Is everything all right, sweetheart?" Tisha asked me, her tone shifting to one of gentle concern. She moved to sit next to me on the couch, but I flinched away. The movement was small, but it was a chasm opening between us. "No," I whispered, the words scraping my throat raw. "Everything is not all right." The confrontation did not erupt like a bomb. It unfolded like a poison, seeping into the room. Tisha tried to steer the conversation, to paint a picture of a grieving son and his devoted girlfriend navigating a difficult time together. But my mother was a rock in the current, unmoved. "Marcus tells me he has been rather isolated," Mom said, her eyes never leaving Tisha's face. "That he has not heard from his brothers or from Clara in months." Tisha's laugh was a light, tinkling sound that felt utterly alien in the tension. "Oh, you know how it is. Everyone grieves differently." Marcus needed space, and I was just giving him that, protecting him. Protecting him from his family, the question was a blade. From well-meaning people who might say the wrong thing, Tisha countered smoothly. I have been handling all his correspondence, filtering things so he could heal in peace. You intercepted my mail, I said, my voice gaining a shred of strength. My phone calls. You told me they did not want to talk to me. You told them I did not want to talk to them. The mask cracked, just a hairline fracture, a tightening around her mouth. Marcus, that is not true. You were so fragile. I was trying to help you. Everything I have done has been for you. And then it all came pouring out. It was not a shout, but a torrent of quiet, agonizing truth. I told her about the letters from Ben I never saw, the voicemails from Clara you deleted. I spoke about the way she would twist my grief for my father, how she would remind me that he was gone, that she was the only one left who truly understood me, that without her, I would be completely alone. The words felt like pulling shards of glass from my own flesh, painful but necessary. You made me dependent on you, I said, the final, terrible realization dawning even as I spoke it aloud. You used my dad's death to trap me. Tisha stood up, her composure finally shattering. How dare you? After everything I have sacrificed for you, I built my life around you, I saved you. You did not save me, I said, and for the first time I believed it. You imprisoned me. The front door swung open again, and this time it was Ben and Clara, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and fierce determination. They had been waiting for my signal, a text message with a single word. Now. They stood flanking my mother, a united front, our family. The sight of them, solid and real, filled me with a courage I did not know I possessed. Tisha looked at the three of them, then back at me, and she saw that her control was gone. The illusion she had so carefully constructed was crumbling to dust around her. The anger in her eyes was pure and terrifying, but it was met with a wall of silent, unwavering resolve from my family. You think you can just toss me aside, she hissed, her voice low and venomous. After everything, you are nothing without me, Marcus. You will see, you will come crawling back. You will leave now, Tisha, my mother said, her voice leaving no room for argument. Your things will be sent to you. You will not contact my son again. For a long moment, Tisha just stood there, a statue of rage and defeat. Then, with a sound of pure contempt, she turned and walked out the door. The click of the latch behind her was the most profound sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of a lock opening, of a chain breaking. The silence that followed was heavy, but it was a different kind of heavy. It was the silence after a storm has passed, a quiet exhaustion full of potential. Clara was the first to move, crossing the room and pulling me into a hug that felt like coming home. Ben clapped a hand on my shoulder, his grip firm and reassuring. My mother simply watched us, her eyes shining with tears she would not shed, her strength the foundation upon which we all stood. The reckoning was over, the return began. The months that followed were not easy. There were therapists, offices with soft lighting and box tissues, where I learned words like codependency and emotional abuse. There were long, difficult conversations with my family, untangling the lies Tisha had woven. There were nights where the ghost of that isolation would whisper to me, and I would wake up in a cold panic in my old childhood room, needing to pad down the hall and see my mother sleeping peacefully in her bed, a tangible reminder that I was safe. But I was healing. The color was slowly seeping back into my world. I started helping Ben at his auto shop, the simple, honest work of grease and engines a balm to my spirit. Laughter began to find its way back into our house, tentative at first, then more freely. It was on one of those quiet, golden afternoons, the kind that feels suspended in time, that Clara found me on the back porch. I was watching a robin pull a worm from the damp earth, a simple, ordinary miracle. She sat beside me, not saying anything for a while. Then, she reached into the pocket of her jeans and pulled it out. The vintage watch, the one my father had left me, the one I had rejected in my deepest fog of grief. She held it in her open palm, the worn leather strap coiled, the brass casing glowing softly in the afternoon sun. She did not say a word. She did not need to. This was not a demand or a test. It was an offering, a quiet question. I looked from the watch to her face, and I saw the love there, patient and unwavering. I saw the reflection of my father in her eyes. I thought of all the lost time, the months stolen by Tisha's poison, and I knew I did not want to lose any more. My hand was steady as I reached out. I took the watch from her palm. The leather was cool and familiar against my skin. I did not hesitate. I wrapped the strap around my wrist, fastened the buckle, and let it settle into place. It felt right. It was not a heavy weight of expectation anymore. It was a connection, a touchstone. I held my wrist up, watching the slender second hand tick-tick-tick its way around the dial. It was a sound I had not heard in over a year. It was the sound of my life starting again. Clara smiled, a slow, beautiful sunrise of a smile, and placed her hand over mine. We sat there in the warm silence, listening to the watch keep its steady time. But as the moment stretched, a cold, familiar dread began to prick at the edges of my newfound peace. The watch was a symbol of moving forward, but the past, I was learning, was not so easily left behind. The tick of the watch seemed to grow louder, and with each beat, a single, terrifying thought echoed in my mind. Tisha said I would crawl back. What if she was not just talking about me? What if she was planning to make sure of it?